what now? Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn has just wrapped up in an absolute firefight, with Eubank getting the nod via unanimous decision, and there being a lot of options that could be next for both. So what's actually next for Eubank and Benn?
But before we get into that, we're Punch Talk and are bringing you guys daily combat sports videos, so if you enjoy the content, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel. So coming off of a massive event with all the lead up in the world between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, with a satisfying finale leaving the Eubanks victorious once again, it leaves the question, what's really next for both of these guys? And the most obvious option currently is definitely a rematch, with there also being a rematch clause already in place for the fight, and with Turki Al-Sheikh saying this fight is planned to be next. It seems like it definitely makes sense. Try to give Conor Benn the opportunity to get the rematch and potentially get himself a win over Eubank. I'm sure there would probably be some maybe differences in the weight. Maybe with Eubank winning, there won't be a rehydration clause again. And for sure the fans would want to see it, with it being such an incredible fight, both guys fighting their heart out, putting it all on the line till the very last round. It would honestly make sense for both guys, especially Chris Eubank Jr. being 35 years old now, might as well get that big payday and try to make it 2-0 against Conor Benn. And as well for Benn, losing his undefeated record, this would be a great chance for him to get that win back and be able to reclimb and build again from there.
Yeah, like you said, this is being planned for potentially as soon as late September at Tottenham once again. So they want to get this one back. They want to do this one again. Obviously, their fathers had those two war of fights back in the day. Now it seems like they want to do the same with the sons. And when you look at the way this fight played out, it does make sense. It's not like this was a pure domination on either side. It's not like Chris Eubank Jr. put an absolute clinic. It was a relatively close fight, going the distance. Both guys having their moments, to say the least. Conor Benn hurting Eubank, then Eubank hurting Conor Benn in those later stages of the fight. So it makes sense to book a rematch. But if you're looking outside of that, if you're looking at what could each guy do, obviously Conor Benn could potentially move back down in weight. It doesn't seem like he is a natural 160 pounder. He was looking a lot smaller than Eubank in the actual ring. So him being a natural welterweight, at least formerly, he hasn't fought there in years. So would he be able to make that weight again after bulking up to fight Eubank Jr. at middleweight? It is going to be tough, but he called out Mario Barrios. It seems like he wants that fight, even though Mario is supposedly having a fight against Manny Pacquiao in the summer. Who knows if that's going to go down, or if Conor Benn will want the winner of that or whatever. Obviously right now the king at welterweight is Jaron Boots Ennis, with Crawford moving up in weight, with Spence being inactive. That would be a sick fight, and there are a lot of banger fights for Conor Benn if he does return to welterweight. Now there's some new guys there in the mix, the Ryan Garcias, potentially a Devin Haney. So I could see him moving back down there, but I feel like his ego, his pride is going to want to get this one back, especially for that family name and how much this meant to him. We saw how affected and how devastated he was with this outcome.
It's a hard one to swallow, man. It's a hard one to swallow. I mean, obviously, I didn't come into the fight thinking it will be that close. I didn't come into the fight to lose. I didn't come in the fight for anything apart from winning. And obviously it weren't good enough.
He was fully confident he was going to get the job done, and it didn't end up going his way. So I feel like in the back of Conor Benn's mind, he really wants to get this one back. And if they are going to run it back, it's probably going to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, it's just hard to see him not wanting to get this fight back. With how much passion and emotion he showed leading up to the fight and also afterwards, it only makes sense that he's going to want nothing else but this fight. But it's not even like because he lost, his stock necessarily dropped. Many people were definitely impressed with the heart that Benn showed and felt like he honestly got humbled after the fight, which raised his stock even further in the eyes of the viewers. So with him still being young and still being very game, it's possible he could get some big fights, especially if he's able to beat Eubank in a rematch. And his future is definitely bright, but on the other hand, for Eubank Jr., he doesn't have that much time left in the sport. It's pretty much now or never for him to get the big fights. So it's either if he goes for that rematch with Conor Benn, or if he goes a different path, it's gotta be a meaningful or a big fight where he can earn a lot of money. Of course, the biggest fight would be that Canelo option. And if that does happen, it's definitely going to be much further down the line, with Canelo next fighting William Skull, and then after that in September going against Terrence Bud Crawford. There's a lot of space till then and time for him to maybe get another fight underway if he doesn't get the rematch against Benn. possibly even fight for a title now. There's a lot of hype behind him, and he can even possibly go after the WBC belt at 160 against Carlos Adames. Granted, he's still able to make the weight, and for talking technicalities, he did miss the 160 limit by 0.05 pounds.
Listen, it is what it is. If they're going to take $500,000 off of me for being 0.5 pounds off of the limit, then that's just what it is. That's the people that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom and Conor Benn are.
Honestly, some less likely fights in that division are upcoming guys like Aaron McKenna, who just put on an amazing performance against Liam Smith, someone that Chris Eubank Jr. has 2 fights again, 1 win and 1 defeat. And I just don't see a reason why he would go after a young prospect with a lot to lose and not much to gain, honestly. So realistically for Eubank Jr., it's gotta be that huge rematch against Ben, or a massive fight against a Canelo, or going after a belt.
Yeah, and that is considering that Eubank Jr. still wants to stay in the sport. Like we mentioned, he is probably past his best. It's not like he's completely done and he's completely out of it, because he just put on one of his career best performances here against Conor Benn, but it was still a close fight against a guy much smaller than him. So how much does he still have left in the tank? How much does he still want to fight if it's not one of those massive ones? I feel like a Canelo fight is much more likely than people are giving it credit for. Going into this fight, there were talks about the winner potentially going up against Canelo, and Canelo does have that 4-fight deal with Riyadh Season. Earlier on this year, they said in that February 2026 date that Canelo was planned to either be fighting Dimitri Bivol, Hamza Shiraz, or maybe Chris Eubank Jr. And with Eubank Jr. having his career biggest win, getting a lot of the eyes on him, getting his name out there way more with this Conor Benn fight, I feel like that's definitely a very legitimate option if he just waits out for Canelo to fight Skull, fight Crawford, and then potentially February 2026, he could take on the super middleweight king in Canelo Alvarez. Now, would he win that fight is another question that would probably be the hardest one of his career, and he would be heavily the underdog. But regardless, I feel like also retirement is potentially on the table for Eubank Jr. He settled the score against Conor Benn. He had that massive fight. What else is there if he's not going to chase championships or the rematch isn't going to happen? Like you said, there's no point to take on just up-and-comers and maybe tarnish the reputation that he's already built, even though he doesn't have the most insane resume or legacy. He is a really big name right now, and there are definitely still big options for both guys. In my opinion, for Conor Benn, I don't know if welterweight is the move. Maybe go to 154. He fought there a couple times getting ready for this Eubank Jr. fight, and I feel like he's outgrown welterweight at this point, but maybe I'm wrong. He did come in at that same day weigh-in at 165 pounds. He is a little bit bigger than I feel like most people think, but who knows, maybe he does get back to welterweight no problem and takes on some of the contenders or champions there.
But coming off of this huge event, there's definitely massive options out there for both guys. And regardless of who won, who lost, both of the fighter stocks have risen in terms of who they may be able to fight next, the impact of their rematch, and just their overall career trajectories. But let us know down below who you think Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. are going to be fighting next. And if you want to see more about this fight, be sure to click on the screen. We need to talk about Eubank versus Benn.